My name is Christopher Newhook. I moved here in 1999. And as soon as I came here, I became infatuated with this little church. Primarily because it wasn't a church that anybody knew anything about. It was the little church that could, because over there is the large church, the Catholic Church, and that's where primarily all the people go. And so this had a very small congregation, and it was never open and never saw it being used. The Historical Society was approached by the remaining congregation of about 3 or 4 people and asked us if we would help them plaque this church for heritage purposes. They were afraid that if it didn't get properly acknowledged in the provincial government, that it could be turned over to some business, it could be demolished, who knows. So now the church belongs to the Historical Society. The grounds still belong to the diocese. So the church is ours, but the headstones and the graveyard is not.
Hi, I'm Tom O'Keefe. I'm president of the Placentia Area Historical Society, and as such we have a responsibility of promoting our history and protecting it where we can, any artifacts and so on. So we're involved with that, and that's really probably, I guess, what got us involved with St. Luke's Anglican Church. But the idea was it's an important historic site, so we wanted to keep it, first of all, keep it looking as much as it had for years. So people who used, or even visitors, tourism, could just go in and see what a little church like that would have been new and like. So it's quite interesting that way.
This building is the third, definitely the third, possibly the fourth church in this location. It's not been confirmed, but we think that the Basque people who are coming here probably before Columbus to catch fish and process fish had some sort of a religious structure here in this location. And we know that because we found Basque headstones just right around here in the church grounds. And they're on display at the Raleigh House Museum right now. We know that the Friar Recollects made this a French church ground and a French structure in 1689. Then in 1713, when the French seceded Placentia, this was a French church turned over to an English church. And then in 1786, Prince William Henry, with a blessing from his father, King George III, gave money to build a church here. And he gave us the tipstaff, which is at the museum. He gave us a communion set and a tapestry.
And it's on probably one of the most historic sites in definitely Newfoundland, but maybe even in North America. The St. Luke's graveyard there was one of the oldest sites, active sites. It was back in 1563, a Basque sailor who was sick and dying said he wanted to be buried in that graveyard. So that's been quite a while. But the water font, the lectern, and the altar are all from a previous church that used to be here. So that makes that quite interesting.
We at one of the meetings, it was brought up that somebody had requested the idea of using this as the church as an escape room, and we investigated. So it was pitched to the Historical Society, and I know that a number of people did not know what an escape room was. They just didn't get the concept. So I knew I had done one before. I saw the potential, and I said, let's push this. Let's go. Let's get it.
All right, yeah, so my name is Kevin Noserly. I'm one of 4 owners of Escape Quest, which is an escape room in downtown St. John's. I recently moved to Placentia at the top of the pandemic, and I discovered St. Luke's Church by walking my dog and playing Pokemon Go. And when I came by it, I just thought it was a perfect location to host an escape game. It has this history baked right into it, so it's on, the oldest European cemetery on the island. It's one of 4 churches that have been built here and possibly the oldest consecrated ground. So yeah, it was a really exciting narrative that I thought an escape room could help introduce to the public. So an escape room is basically you and a group of friends go into a room. You have 1 hour to look for clues, solve puzzles, overcome obstacles, and try and escape the scenario before your time runs out. It's all about teamwork, communication, and having a bit of fun. This church was ideal for a number of reasons. First of all, from a logistics standpoint, it's owned by the Placentia Area Historical Society, so it was relatively easy to set up a partnership with them. It's right next to O'Reilly House Museum as well, which has a great deal to do with like sort of the mercantile era of the history of the area. It was just sort of at the heart of Placentia. You could tie in stories about the Irish, the Jerseymen, the British, the French, the Basque, all could be tied to this location. So it was a great way to tell the vast history of the area in sort of a centralized historic point.
The Historical Society were asked, could Kevin run an escape room here? And I met with Kevin and Tom, and he pitched the idea to us. We went back to the committee and we got approval. And I've been working with Kevin to help him, promote this. And as a member as a worker with Parks Canada, Castle Hill, we picked up on that because we really like to promote local entertainment. And so I was pushing a lot of people through this past summer to take advantage of the escape room. And in a church like this, it adds so much to the authenticity of the story of Placentia Plunder that he's promoting. Everybody loves to get into old buildings, so it's just a nice little excuse for people to explore. And it's got great energy. This place has wonderful energy, and it's got wonderful acoustics, and it's so minimal in its structure, and there's not many things here you can kind of break or damage, or it was perfect. I think it was a perfect opportunity for us to take advantage of that. If you were big, you could play in the bigger centers, but there was nowhere for little people, for people with little, good stories, but not professionals. Placentia Bay is known for a lot of music. We are a music mecca. But there's a lot of us that do other things. So inevitably we evolved to this space, and that's how the solstice came into play. And we do the winter solstice here now. I primarily do it now. And the solstice is on usually December 21st. And then I'll do another one at Castle Hill for June 21st. When I approached the congregation, a couple of little old ladies and a few old men, and I said I wanted to do a solstice, they really didn't have a clue what that was. And I could sense the curiosity, I suppose, of what it is I had in mind. Because primarily this is an Anglican church, and it's about baptisms and the rituals of the Anglican religion. So what I wanted to do was probably a little obscure. So they reluctantly gave me the opportunity to do one, and I asked around. I had a few people, some friends and people that I knew had a little story in their pocket, or they wanted to sing a song, or they wanted to present something, and I said sure. And so I put up a few posters, and lo and behold, we filled the place. And we really filled the place. And it became a very intimate but very non-planned event. We had people showing up with cookies and cake and tea and coffee, and I would walk in and there would be standing room only, and I'd get up and I really would just not know who was performing until they actually came through the door. And then I'd make a quick list, get up on stage and just say, hey, who wants to do what? And after the first one, when the congregation saw how well it was appreciated and the turnout, they wanted more. And it became a pattern, almost a Christmas tradition, even though it's not primarily Christian, it's pre-Christian. The celebration of the solstice, meaning the return of the sun, on December 21st. It did a couple of things, because I could see in some cases people were coming in to come because out of curiosity. It's something new to the community. And in some cases, a lot of the people had never been in here before. They'd lived here their entire life as Catholics and were told to not only not go into the building, but stay away. And in the old days, you'd walk down the street and you were told by the religion to look the other way. You weren't even allowed to look at the church, let alone go in there. So in some cases, some of the congregation in my show, some of the people coming in, that was the first time they were ever in this little church, and this is their community. So that was a nice little, what's the word? Nice thing to know, that I was opening up this church to the community who had never used it as their own. It was never appreciated.
The church is special to me just because, I love history. As a recent settler here in Placentia, I love going around and learning about the various history and stories that this area has to tell. Like so much of rural Newfoundland, there are a lot of stories sort of baked into the structures and the local families that we don't often get a chance to look at and review and sort of show off to the world. So when I learned about the history of the area and the church, I thought it would just make a great adventure to share a little bit of rural Newfoundland's history with the rest of the world.
Well, first of all, it's important to keep any historic site active. If it's a type of site that can be made active, it's important to keep that active and allow people to continue to visit the church. And also it's important to run events, particularly if they in any way tie in with history, to try and spread knowledge of our history in the area. So in that way it's obviously very important to us, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to take it over.
Churches in general were built historically as a sense of a focal place for communities to gather. Stop your working, stop whatever it is you're doing, to come together as a community and celebrate. Celebrate in most cases to celebrate the glory of God. With this church, it also served that purpose in the community, but as religion is changing its perspective, it's changing as we change. There's a value of this as a community center, as a place to go on a Sunday to receive, to get married in, to be born in, to die in, to receive communion, to receive the Word of God. It doesn't have that value anymore. And as with a lot of churches in worldwide, they're losing their need. People are not wanting to go to church anymore. But we still need that. We still crave a sense of community. We still want to get together as a community and celebrate and come together and say, "How's your week? How's the kids? How's the wife and kids? What's up these days?" We've lost that in a sense, and that was one of the value of church. Church it made us collectively come together and unite and sometimes grieve, sometimes together, sometimes celebrate together. For the long time, this church has had no value in 90% of the population because they're all Catholics who this is just somebody else's church. So by taking away the stigma of Catholicism or Protestantism and just turning this into a community center, it's allowing us to bring anybody who wants to come into the door, sit down and enjoy the space.